they came back effectively 10% was quite surprising, and the markets reacted very positively to that.
So where were you seeing the biggest rebound?
I think the biggest rebound is frankly literally across the board. We knew that all these tariffs were really about the US against China. We thought it would be a long protracted battle, but in effect it feels like it's been resolved quite quickly. Now what we have is a 90-day reprieve, so we'll have to see. But honestly, it feels like this is the best possible outcome given what was revealed on April the 2nd.
That's 100 at a 1 month high, the DAX closing at a record high as well, the S&P, Nasdaq in the US at 3 or 4%. So some big moves there. And actually, just in the last few minutes, we've seen an announcement that Donald Trump has slashed the tariff on small parcels sent from mainland China and Hong Kong to the US. So more on that on its way. Pharmaceuticals, Altaf, something else impacted by President Trump's desires and policies. He said he would slash the price of prescriptions in the United States. What was the ripple effect for the likes of GSK?
Yes, this has had a negative effect on big pharma stocks. The idea here is that the US feels like it's subsidizing drugs in other countries by paying too much for prescription drugs in the US, and the feeling that if those costs are going to have to come down in the US, that is going to impact these big pharmaceutical companies' margins.
Altaf, thank you very much. Construction sector is in the process of scaling up to try and meet that 1.5 million new homes target that the government had set. One estimate from the sector's training is a million extra workers by 2028. So, how will the government's plan, in its words, to reshape the UK immigration system towards those who contribute mostly to growth? Requirements for foreign workers to have degree level skills, standards of English and history raising, increasing the time it takes to gain citizenship. Mark Reynolds co-chairs the Construction Skills Mission alongside also executive chair of Mason Group, UK construction firm. Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sean.
Do these latest immigration policy changes help the construction sector grow or hinder it?
They certainly provide some challenges. So if you look at the base itself, as a business we employ 8,000 people, about 5,000 paid, but it's the 11,000 that up to our sites every day, which is the challenge. If you look at the plan overall, immigration plan, one of the concerns we have is around the impact on universities, particularly cost pressures they're already under. So we need to work with government to look at how we can make sure we're getting people through the education system works. But the real challenge is getting through the training process and making sure that we get time to train the right jobs. There's things like
I just wonder, on the face of it, are you saying this makes construction companies' jobs harder to grow and provide the workforce to get the projects that they need?
everything is about that. So in principle, the principles are absolutely fine now. That's held out in implementation for large organisations like ourselves. Probably easier. But let's just look at some of the specialist areas that we really need, where we need mobile and stuff in the house. So things like shortage of overhead transfer pipe, bring the cables, build the power lines, upgrade our power systems. We don't have enough of those.
Do you see in the policy announcements that will mean you'll get more of those?
We will have to work with government to make sure. So that's where the temporary shortage list comes in, and that's where we work with government. But
Did they consult you, Mark? Because you co-chair this mission board for the sector alongside this. Have they talked to you before making these announcements about the impact on it?
yes, they did, and we will a couple of proposals, which is why the mission board got established. The industry itself put forward a target of 100,000 people a year by the end of this parliament.
And do the government's announcements mean that will be an easier target to meet?
Yes, it does, because they offer 600 million pounds more packages for our industry. And they lower the target. They actually set the target to 600,000 by the end of the parliament. So our sector, and we've got
Golf semi-final, Sunderland's have a 2-1 advantage from the first leg. Rachel Blackmore, the first female jockey to win the Grand National, has announced her retirement with immediate effect. BBC's sports correspondent Laura Scott reports.
In 2021, she became the first woman to win the Grand National in the race's 182-year history, on board the Henry de Bromhead-trained Manila Times. She went on to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup a year later. Blackmore, who was sidelined for 3 months last year with a serious neck injury, said she felt the time was right to hang up her boots after 16 years as a jockey, saying, "I just feel so lucky to have been legged up on the horses I have and to have experienced success I never even dreamt could be possible." Those close to her said she was in the privileged position to be retiring on her terms at the top of the sport.
The tennis star Emma Raducanu lost her 4th round match at the Italian Open, beaten in straight sets by the world number 3, Coco Gauff. British men's number 1 and current world number 5, Jack Draper, faces Corentin Moutet of France in the round of 16 this morning, while the world number 1, Yannick Sinner, is through to the 4th round in Rome in his first tournament since returning from a 3-month doping ban. And in cricket, the Indian Premier League is set to resume on Saturday after the tournament was suspended due to hostilities between India and Pakistan. The final has been pushed back now to June the 3rd.
Thank you, Kathy. On BBC iPlayer, a family like few others.
The Kinnahans were street dealers who became billionaires.
Dublin's deadliest and one of the world's most wanted.
You're in the league of Pablo Escobar.
This is the story of an Irish cartel and their billion-pound global empire.
What you see is only a quarter of the total seizure.
Valued at about $1.3 billion.
The money is really, really rapid.
Time now 28 minutes to 7. You're listening to Today on BBC 4 with Anil Rajan and Nick Robinson and Jane Steele has a summary of the news.
The head of the UN Agency for Palestinians, Philippe Lazzarini, has told the BBC that Israel is using food as a weapon in Gaza, which he said amounted to a war crime. He warned that people could soon be dying from hunger unless Israel lifted its blockade of the territory, which has been in place since early March. His comments follow a report from a joint venture of UN agencies, aid groups and governments, saying Gaza is close to famine. Israel says the blockade is putting pressure on Hamas to release hostages. The Metropolitan Police says counter-terrorism officers are investigating a suspected arson attack on Sir Keir Starmer's house in North London. The fire in the early hours of yesterday morning damaged the front door. Detectives are trying to establish if there's a connection with 2 other fires in the area, one of them at another property said to be linked to the Prime Minister. President Trump will arrive in Riyadh this morning at the start of his first major foreign tour since he took office for a second time. He hopes to secure deals worth hundreds of billions of dollars in Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Members of the Scottish Parliament will vote this evening on whether to give their initial backing to a proposal to legalise assisted dying. The bill is aimed at allowing some terminally ill adults to seek medical help to end their life. MSPs will act according to their conscience after being given a free vote. The Skills Minister, Baroness Smith, has rejected criticism of Sir Keir Starmer after he said that high levels of immigration could turn Britain into an island of strangers. Critics, including MPs suspended by Labour, have likened the comment to Enoch Powell's infamous Rivers of Blood speech in the 1960s. Baroness Smith said such comparisons were wrong and Labour always listened to people's concerns. Data from nearly 5,000 children referred to NHS excess weight clinics in England show that about 40% of them are from the most deprived areas. The body mass index of some of the children was twice the level considered healthy.
Thank you, Jane. 26 minutes to 7 now. The left say he's sounding like Enoch Powell. The right says he's taking us all for fools. Keir Starmer's speech at around this time yesterday, a couple of hours later, we heard it live on the programme. That speech on immigration is still making waves. Our chief political correspondent Henry Zeffman joins us. Let's begin with the criticism from the left, Henry. Is it being echoed privately by the sorts of people that Keir Starmer would worry about?
Not yet, I don't think, Nick. But I don't think we should walk past the fact that members of the Labour Party, Labour MPs, are comparing their own Labour Party leader and Prime Minister to Enoch Powell. That is quite something, even if it is generally Labour MPs, although not exclusively Labour MPs, who are already very critical of Keir Starmer and disagree with him on lots of things. That does seem to be an escalation of their rhetoric about the Prime Minister and his policy decisions. In terms of the private view of the sort of bulk of Labour MPs, I don't think that's quite where it is. They stood on a manifesto promise to reduce immigration. Many of them have just witnessed local elections in which Reform UK have done very well in their areas and are worried about finding ways to win back those voters before the next general election. So I think in that sense it's gone down broadly fine among Labour MPs. I guess whether that would still remain the case should, say, care homes begin to struggle to find staff or universities begin to struggle for their finances even more, I think that's really the moment when the politics of this might begin to bite.
And turn to the right, and they are saying, look, Sir Keir Starmer's a human rights lawyer who stood to be leader of the Labour Party, arguing to make a positive case for migration.
Yeah, and it is true that this is very different to the kinds of things that Keir Starmer said when he was running for leader of the Labour Party and before, even if it's not so different from what he was saying in the run-up to the general election as leader of the Labour Party. So Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, talking about Keir Starmer having undergone a miraculous conversion, Nigel Farage making a similar argument about hypocrisy. I think what that does underscore is that this is a profound repudiation of something that actually many politicians across different political parties, but especially the Labour Party, have believed for so long, that immigration is almost axiomatically an economic good for the country. That is something that the Prime Minister Keir Starmer repudiated yesterday, and that is really quite something. I think one other point on the strategy is that this is all about slowing the rate of increase, and the Labour government hopes that by slowing the rate of increase of migration in the coming years, they will receive political reward. Just spent years in another area where we see inflation, seeing governments struggle with the idea of telling them the rate of increase is slowing, voters and saying, yeah, but it's still going up, in that case, prices. But you just wonder if this government will come to experience that when it comes to immigration.
Thank you. I'm here for the Conservatives before 7 and from Second Guardian.
23 minutes to 7. Let's turn to Gaza and Milan now. In Jerusalem. Ilan, good morning. We've got this as we're covering on the programme this morning where Jeremy Bowen has spoken to the Fundamental Commission on food aid in Gaza. And it's a pretty stark warning. Just take us through what it says.
Well, there's a stark warning from UNRWA, which has been the biggest humanitarian aid distributor in Gaza, but also from all other UN agencies in the past day. This is because of this report that came through from the Global Hunger Monitor, which is made up of over 20 partners. They include UN agencies, major international non-government organisations, and government aid organisations as well. And it's reported that nearly 500,000 people face starvation out of the population of 2.1 million in Gaza, and there is this critical risk of famine by September. We had the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres saying he was alarmed by the findings. He said this is not a natural disaster, but a human-made catastrophe the world should not allow. This is now the longest continuous total blockade of Gaza that's endured during the war, more than 70 days, with Israel closing all of the crossings to Gaza. And we have, different UN officials accusing Israel of using aid as a weapon of war. We've got senior Israeli officials who talk about using starvation as a tactic to pressure Hamas to release the remaining hostages it's holding. And the UN and others say this is a clear violation of international humanitarian law. And many Palestinians also fear it's part of the plan to ultimately expel them from the Gaza Strip. You had the head of the World Food Programme saying, there is food standing by if Israel would open the crossings that have been closed since the beginning of March. Something like 116,000 metric tons of food assistance near to those crossings that could feed 1 million people, so about half the population, for up to 4 months if the crossings were opened. And at the moment you've got no supplies going in at all. That affects not just food, but also of course water, hygiene products, medicines and health equipment, and shelter as well. It has so many different effects on the people in Gaza.
Yes, we'll come back to the story and those effects at 7:30 and the newsrooms program. Milan now in Jerusalem. Thank you.
Let's turn now at 20 to 7 to the front pages and the politics of that speech on immigration, highlighted really by the different reaction at different front pages. So the Guardian, wrestling made by Hawthorne MP accused of echoing far-right rhetoric in immigration speech. It picks out not just the phrase "a stranger" used by Keir Starmer yesterday, echoing the phrase from that, he says he connected
TikTok is making you stupid. That's the general gist of this interesting column from James Marriott in the Times. He says TikTok and AI are junk food start dieting. And sub-headlines, in the smartphone age, it's increasingly clear that developing and maintaining our critical faculties requires hard work. And basically, the idea, the sort of paradigm is we should think of social media consumption a bit like we think about foods for nutrition, sort of emotional or intellectual nutrition. I'll just give you a bit of his final paragraph. He says, a recent study found that blocking the internet from the mobile phones of volunteers for only 2 weeks produced measurable improvement in their cognitive abilities and thinking. I don't see why that should be less compelling as a challenge to ambitious competitive people than training for the half marathon. Books, I submit, are the Pilates of the mind. I never imagined I'd find myself an apostle of the wellness movement made in hell.
AI tools.
Use AI tools all the time.
Yeah, no, I've only just started to
TikTok, you can spend hours just filing yourself away looking at box videos from the 1990s and thinking, what have I done?
Yeah, no, I'm not tempted to do that, I can confess. Now, other papers just briefly on the front page of the Telegraph. Trump toys with late entrance to the Ukraine. If Vladimir Putin turns up in Istanbul to meet Zelensky, then the papers suggesting Donald Trump will go to.
18 minutes straight, and just on what Nick was talking about there, the Prime Minister has indeed been accused by a former Labour MP of reflecting the language of speech of liberation yesterday. As the commentary first chance to discuss the weapons of people's adoption, is that parliamentary response? Susan?
Tradition like calling order or talking to preachers and muffins. Ministers make their announcements in time for the morning breakfast news. Then the Speaker culminates that they should talk on first. Details of new immigration policy have been reported widely since Sunday morning. The Speaker fired his deputy, but Rose was once again relieved.
The Speaker does not understand how the government persists in making announcements in this way when the ministerial code is absolutely clear.
Well, whatever ministers' reasons for wanting to manage their news, MPs are already able to digest the plans. Skilled worker visas will now require that they re-level qualification, a dedicated scheme to bring in care workers laws, tighter rules for students, and tougher English language requirements. The Home Secretary and Vancouver reckon those alone will bring immigration down by around 100,000 people a year.
Where we need to go further to restore the sustained system, we will.
She said she laid out
How we will restore control, fairness and order to the system, how we will continue to bring net migration down, and how we will turn the payoff page on the chaos and failure of the past.
her Conservative shadow Chris Phil didn't think we'd do anything of the sort. He said it was a big plan that barely scratched the surface.
The honest truth is that we need to go much further than this paper does. Immigration needs to come down a lot more. And under new leadership, the Conservative Party is taking a new approach.
Chris Phil used to be a Home Office minister. Given the levels of immigration they ran, he wasn't
Lazzarini said that Israel's refusal to allow any food, medical aid, or other humanitarian supplies into Gaza since the beginning of March amounted to war. He said that the atrocities committed by Hamas in the 7th of October attacks on Israel have been followed by Israeli atrocities against the Palestinians in Gaza. Mr. Lazzarini said it might end up to bloodshed. Throughout the war, Philip Lazzarini's views have been dismissed by Israel as lies, which he denies, along with Israel's repeated allegations Mr. Lazzarini's view of Gaza's food emergency is backed up by latest updates from the joint venture of UN agencies, NGOs and governments known since Gaza is close to famine, with the entire population suffering acute food insecurity. In plain English, that means their needs are
Scotland Yard says the street arrest against five suspicious. Details of police are investigating.
Emergency services arrived at the property in Kentish Town in the early hours of yesterday morning. The street was quickly dark. No one was hurt in the blaze, but the front door was damaged. Counter-terrorism commander now leading the investigation. Police say the fire is being treated as suspicious. They're also investigating whether there might be links to a vehicle fire which took place on the same street last Thursday, and another property which is said to be connected to Sakir in Islington on Sunday. In a statement, Sakir Starmer, who is currently living in his official residence in Downing Street, thanked the emergency services for their work, adding it was a live investigation, so he wouldn't be commenting further.
President Trump is due to arrive in Saudi Arabia in the next hour to begin a 4-day tour of the Middle East. He's expected to use the trip to focus on investment deals rather than regional security. But Mr. Trump is also likely to face further questions about his plan to accept a jumbo jet from the Qatari royal family. Editor Sarah Smith reports from Riyadh.
Donald Trump has said it would be stupid to turn down the offer of a free luxury plane, calling it a great gesture from Qatar. The aircraft has been described as a flying palace, will be refitted to service Air Force One for official presidential travel. Mr. Trump insists it would not be a personal gift but one to the US Department of Defense. Harsh criticism of the potential gift from both critics and supporters of President Trump threatens to overshadow his tour of the Middle East, which will focus on signing economic agreements that secure financial investment in the US rather than negotiating any peace deals. The conflict in Gaza will obviously be on Mr. Trump's mind as he tours the region, but he's not planning to visit Israel. He has said he may fly on to Turkey later this week for talks between Russia and Ukraine if his presence would be helpful.
A vote will be held at the Scottish Parliament this evening to determine whether MSPs back the general principles of new assisted dying legislation. Similar proposals for England and Wales to allow some terminally ill people to seek medical help to end their lives are working their way through the Westminster Parliament. Scotland correspondent Katrina Renton reports.
Politicians at the Scottish Parliament have twice before rejected attempts to change the law on assisted dying, most recently in 2015. The Liberal Democrat MSP Liam MacArthur, who's developed the current proposal, believes the mood in Parliament is very different, albeit he suggests the vote will be tight. He believes it could help reduce the suffering of some desperately ill people. A number of high-profile MSPs have expressed concerns, including the First Minister John Swinney, who will vote against. He fears it could put pressure on sick and disabled people to end their lives prematurely. It's a free vote allowing MSPs to act according to their conscience. If MSPs reject the proposal this evening, then that will be the end of the matter. If it's voted through, the debate would continue and MSPs could make changes to the bill ahead of a final vote.
The Education Minister, Baroness Smith, has rejected comparisons between the Prime Minister's language on immigration and Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech. Sir Keir Starmer said yesterday that Britain risks becoming an island of strangers without sweeping changes to immigration policy. Independent MP Baron Sultana said it was a disgrace the Prime Minister was echoing Mr Howe's words from the 1960s. But Baroness Smith, who served as Home Secretary under Gordon Brown, told the BBC's Newsnight the criticism was wrong.
Labour and Labour governments have always listened to people in terms of their concerns about their security, the opportunities that they want to have for themselves and their children. And when we see something that we understand that people believe is unfair, then we're going to take action on that. That's what the British people would expect us to do. That's what Labour governments do.
A new study shows that a disproportionate number of children referred to NHS excess weight clinics in England are from the most deprived areas. Research presented at the European Congress on Obesity found some of the youngsters had a body mass index of over 50. A person is considered obese when their BMI is over 30. Here's our health editor Hugh Pym.
Specialist access weight clinics in England help severely obese children, providing mental health support and care for other underlying conditions, as well as dietary advice. The new research found that more than 40% of patients lived in the most deprived neighbourhoods, and where data was available, nearly half had autism or a learning disability, and a significant proportion had a health complication such as liver disease. NHS England said the research underlines the need for early intervention to prevent the onset of long-term health problems.
The singer representing Israel at the Eurovision Song Contest has told the BBC she was scared by some protests against her country at the start of this year's event. Iqbal Raphael is a survivor of the mass attack on the Nova Music Festival in 2023. She was speaking to our special correspondent Lucy Manning in her only UK broadcast interview ahead of her appearance in Eurovision's second semi-final in the Swiss city of Basel on Thursday.
At the last major music event Iqbal Raphael attended, she was nearly killed. She survived the October the 7th Hamas attacks by hiding for 8 hours under dead bodies. But at the weekend's opening Eurovision parade, an anti-Israel protester directed a pro-Caesar demonstrator, leaving her scared. The singer said she was expecting to face some bruise and had been practicing singing under those circumstances.
I had a few rehearsals where we put sounds so I can practice when there is distractions in the background.
As some countries call for a discussion about Israel's participation at Eurovision, the 24-year-old said she was concentrating on her music and was proud to represent her country, but acknowledged she had a lot of weight on her shoulders. Lucy Manning reporting.
Jane, thank you very much indeed. It is 7:09. Donald Trump is landing in Riyadh later today. There will be opulence, lavish gifts, and the promise of billions, maybe more, in investment from a kingdom that has changed profoundly and whose ambition knows no bounds. But what there won't be is normalization of the relationship between the Saudis and Israel, or news from the ceasefire. So we're going to return to the issue of Gaza at 7:30, again at 8:30. Let's speak now to Sarah Smith, our North America editor, who is travelling with Trump. Sarah, good morning. Why is Riyadh, why is Saudi Arabia so important to Donald Trump?
Because it's about cash, to be absolutely brutally blunt about it. Donald Trump is not on a diplomatic mission to secure any kind of peace deals or negotiate long-term strategic goals in the Middle East. He is here to secure American investment, and Saudi Arabia has promised him hundreds of billions of dollars of it. Donald Trump's visited 3 countries in all. First Saudi Arabia, also Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and if it goes as he hopes, he wants to go home with $1 trillion worth of promised investment in America, which of course he can tell his constituents is money coming to their communities for prosperity and jobs. So although he is quite focused on foreign affairs at the moment, he can say that this is still America first, because it's about bringing home money rather than any other kind of diplomatic role.
And something that's basically we didn't cover it sufficiently is that Donald Trump is about to accept a gift of a jet from Qatar. There's been a bit of reporting and counter-reporting about this, whether it's a loan or it's a permanent gift. But it is a gift to him personally, and there is a transfer
transferred to Donald Trump's presidential library, whereupon he could use it personally if he wanted to. But this is just, one small part of the way in which Donald Trump makes his business and pleasure, so to speak. His son Eric Trump has been on a sweep through the Middle East doing deals with the Trump Organization in all the countries that Donald Trump is visiting for new Trump towers and hotels, commissioning a Saudi building firm to do hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work for them. He has signed on the dotted line all of these personal business deals from which Donald Trump himself will ultimately profit just before his father sweeps through on this political visit. All of this, of course, has a whiff of corruption about it, say Donald Trump's adversaries, but he has always been very, very upfront about saying if it's out in the open, if it's transparent, if you know about it, then it cannot be corrupt. Although, of course, many experts are saying we just don't know what the quid for this luxury jet being given to him by Qatar would be. We have no idea what he might promise them now or in the future in return for this.
You mentioned, Sarah, that cash is a primary concern for Trump and his family in terms of this visit, but there's also a huge amount of diplomacy going on, of course. Has there been any sort of a change in the mood music from Trump or the White House towards Gaza, and particularly their hitherto steadfast support for Israel?
Well, it's very noticeable that he's not going to Israel on this trip, despite being in the region. And actually, he had been lobbied by the Israeli government to add a stop on this trip, and he has refused to do it. They are running out of patience, frankly, with Israel, and Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, has been making that very, very clear. They are frustrated, frankly, that Israel is not making moves to bring the conflict to an end. It's far from clear that Donald Trump would necessarily put pressure on Israel to do so. He's not as invested in that as Joe Biden was when he was president, but at the same time, if he starts to lose patience and therefore starts to lose focus, Israel may find that they just don't have the backing from Donald Trump, which they thought they had when he won the election, and was going to give them a green light to carry on with their aims in Gaza in a way the Biden administration would have tried to prevent.
Sarah Smith, thank you very much indeed. Just a quick call from Sarah.
It's 14 minutes past 7 now. The debate about whether to legalise assisted dying and how it will totally be able to get close to the end of their lives takes another series of important steps this week. The House of Commons will vote on the issue again on Friday. The Scottish Parliament votes today on its own separate proposals because the law is different in Scotland. Let's talk about that with Dr. Andrew Tickell, Senior Lecturer in Law at Glasgow Caledonian University. Morning to you, Dr. Tickell. How is the law different and how are the proposals different?
Yeah, well, the starting point is different. In England and Wales, it's a criminal offence under the Suicide Act to assist someone to end their life. And most people don't know this, but that act does not in fact apply to Scotland, which means that if you, for example, assist someone to go to the dignity living in Switzerland, you are not currently committing an offence north of the border, but would ultimately be committing one south of it. In terms of these two bills, they are broadly similar in their aims and aspirations. They are both about terminally ill people being enabled, liable to end their lives lawfully with legal security. They do differ in some important respects in terms of the definition, for example, of terminal illness. That's the contested point here, but also the wider question around what safeguards would be appropriate in order to avoid coercion and other such outlays.
In Westminster, a big part of the argument is about being with a court, a judge has to be involved. No such presence of a judge in the Scottish proposals.
That's correct. So the member in charge of this bill is a Liberal Democrat MSP from Orkney, Liam MacArthur, and his view has been that this is fundamentally a clinical matter and a clinical matter for judges, not judges, for doctors rather, to exercise their clinical judgments about, not for courts to intervene in. So the current proposals in Scotland don't contain any particular panel or judicial process to review decision making around this. Instead, doctors would be able to take a view that the person in front of them honestly wants to end their life. Secondly, that they have capacity, they have mental capacity to do so. And thirdly, the doctors will be required to ask themselves and ask their patients, is there any evidence of coercion here about someone being pressurized by their family, friends, or anyone else into ending their life? And if the answers to those questions are yes, and there's a lack of capacity or coercion, then they wouldn't lawfully be able to prescribe medicine. The third element, which is a wee bit different in terms of the Scottish Bill, is it's envisaged that the end-of-life treatment would be self-administered by the individual in Scotland.
Now, it's perfectly possible that the Scottish Parliament votes for a change of the law when the vote gets, or indeed the other way around. What would be the consequences if the law were different, dramatically, on either side of it?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. At the end of the day, the Scottish proposals may have fallen until who knows when. It was 10 years when this matter was last debated in Holyrood. Both pieces of legislation have a requirement, if you're going to access assisted dying, that you live and have lived in the Scottish context for 12 months, or in England and Wales for a similar period of time. So what that would effectively mean, if Westminster does have a majority for this and Holyrood doesn't, or vice versa, is that this conduct will be lawful on one side of the border and unlawful on the other. Now that's also uncommon in some respects, but I do think if we end up in a situation where, particularly if the UK Parliament votes in favour of this and Holyrood does not do so today and at stage 3, then I think that's going to cause campaigners around this to be able to renew the discussion much more rapidly than if we end up in a situation where there's uniformity either for or against assisted dying on both sides of the border.
Dr. Andrew Tickell, thanks for explaining that so clearly from Glasgow.
18 minutes past 7, just in the last few seconds, a man has been arrested in connection with a series of arson attacks. This is concerning the story about the properties linked to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer that were damaged in London this week. A 21-year-old was arrested in the early hours of this morning. He remains in custody. The arrest relates to 3 incidents as we get now, let's go ahead.
So at 19
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it's nice to have the nice weather in the UK, but you know that foreign countries like Greece and Turkey are set up really nicely for us to make the most of it and enjoy it the best that we can.
That's the pitch, isn't it? I'm sure those resorts around the UK would have their own. Sean, you've got your own results out this morning for the 6 months to the end of March. Your profits up 20%, sales up as well. Have you seen any slipping in the overall confidence of holidaymakers at all?
The holiday market seems to be very resilient and very robust at the moment. We're seeing plenty of appetite for people to continue to go away from the UK, and we are expecting this to be another record summer for us.
Right, and so when you look at where the spend is and how they're booking, can you detect any changes in trends?
I'd say the big thing we've seen over the last couple of years is people are becoming a bit more agnostic about where they travel, and they're more focused on getting good value for the type of holiday they want. So, for example, a popular search on our website is to browse 4- and 5-star all-inclusive holidays. From there, compare what's available in all major destinations before making the choice. It's great for customers because you can get the holiday that you want. You can get it with the best value, whether that's Spain, Turkey, Greece, or some emerging destinations like Tunisia and Egypt.
Sean, thank you, Sean Morton. On the beach, we'll see if the results of Hampshire and Cornwall will be rivaling those, I guess, when we get the numbers as the months go by.
That's it. Sean, thank you very much. It is 22. It is Eurovision week. Once a single night event on a Saturday. For some, a week-long festival. A year long, it seems to me. And today sees the first semi-final in the host city of Barcelona. As David Sledger reports on the national flag in flipping. The sound of the turquoise carpet. The gala opening of Eurovision week. A parade of 37 hopeful acts, among them 5. Never stop. Oh no. Don't stop believing. 2 silver-clad brothers from Iceland, Afdan and Matthias Mattisson, and a song with a very Icelandic vibe. We have a song about the boats and rowing.
France? Yes. The rest of the whole country, and it's just us. It's crazy.
How many people are there in Iceland?
Oh, I think like 400,000. Yes. We're so small, so like basically everyone has already competed in Eurovision. We're the last ones that have not gone.
But of course, you don't have to be Icelandic to represent Iceland. Rules are pretty flexible. Denmark's entry this year, Cecil, is from the Faroe Islands. How many people are there on the Faroe Islands?
I think like 54,000 and like 75,000 sheep. So more sheep than people.
They'll all be watching you, won't they?
They all will.
The frontrunners, Sweden, are really Swedish.
We're from Finland actually.
Oh, Finnish?
Yeah, we're Finnish. Yeah, Swedish-speaking Finns.
Do you speak Finnish as well?
Yes. Kyllä, a bit.
And Ireland, who used to be a Eurovision superpower, have... Well, let her introduce herself.
Ready for takeoff.
Emmy Christine Guttorpsrud Christiansen.
I'm trying to work out which bit of Ireland that's from.
We're actually Norwegians.
Yes, Norway, a country once famous for the number of times it got 0 points. Times change, and for an event that shies away from politics, there are always controversies. Questions this year about Israel's participation and the Georgian entry's political allegiances. The whole build-up feels like an election campaign.
What the hell just happened?
The UK's entry this year, Remember Monday. Lauren, Charlotte and Holly Ann have been on a non-stop Eurovision tour with up to 6 countries a week.
We were started the week last week in Amsterdam.
Yes. Yeah.
Then we went to Copenhagen. Then we went to Oslo, then we went to Reykjavik. In 7 days. 7 days. We landed last night. It is wild. It's crazy.
Are you enjoying it?
I can't explain to you how much we're enjoying it. Yeah. We are literally traveling the world, performing in front of hundreds of millions of people. And you're doing it with 2 best friends. I mean, we couldn't ask
We're just on a
for
girls'
anything
trip.
more. We're literally on the best girls' trip of our lives.
And tonight it's the first semi-final. We might think it's tough representing the UK, but at least we're guaranteed a place on Saturday. For many, a Tuesday night in Barcelona will be the end of their Eurovision dream.
No clue, but I liked it.
Well, that was David Sinotto reporting. Who else? And who else could it be but Cardiff?
Morning, thank you very much. Sheffield United are 1 win away from the Premier League after they beat Bristol City 3-0 yesterday, 6-0 on aggregate to reach the Championship playoff final. Sunderland have a 2-point advantage ahead of the second leg of the other playoff semi-final against Coventry tonight. Tennis, and Emma Raducanu lost her 4th round match at the Italian Open yesterday, while Jack Draper, now the world number 5, plays his round of 16 match in Rome today. We can speak to the BBC's tennis correspondent. Morning, Russell Fuller.
Morning, Carthy.
Raducanu defeated in straight sets by Coco Gauff. She joked before the match, Coco Gauff up there in the top 5, while she said she's out there around number 50. Was that ranking difference demonstrated on court in the end?
Yes, it was. Raducanu didn't play a bad match at all, but Goff didn't really give her a look in. She has such power and heavy topspin, and her movement on clay is so much better than Raducanu's. Raducanu did get 3 wins in a clay court tournament for the first time in her career, though. She's nearing in on the top 40 once more, and has had a very different last 10 years to Goff. She was telling me the other day how when she was 11 and Goff was 10, they played a practice match in Florida, and at that point their lives diverged slightly. Goff became a WTA Tour winner at the age of 15 and reached the 4th round at Wimbledon. Raducanu started studying for her GCSEs, and she was watching her on television thinking, I wish I could be out there too.
Yeah, well, Jack Draper, he is up at world number 5. He plays his 4th round match in a couple of hours' time. Does it look like he might repeat his Madrid success in Rome?
I think it's unlikely. Reaching the final in Madrid was a fantastic achievement. Very little rest, flew home for 36 hours. Admits he's low on energy, took his frustration and anger out on his racket and left a mark on the court when he beat Vit Kopriva on Sunday. Said in one of his television interviews that he feels angry sometimes when he gets out of bed, so I think he's running on empty and it's going to be tough, even though he's the favourite against Corentin Moutet of France today.
Yeah, well, rather fresh for different reasons. The world number 1, Yannick Sinner, has played just 2 matches this week since returning from that 3-month doping ban. Is he looking rusty at all after that suspension?
There is definitely some rust, but he's been able to continue the winning streak, which now stretches to 23 matches. Francisco Cerundolo of Argentina will be a tough opponent for him today. He's a good playful player. And I think for Sinner, yes, he would love to win the tournament in an ideal world. And his two principal rivals, Carlos Alcaraz and Alex Zverev, are in the other half of the draw. And it's about getting many matches as possible under his belt before the French Open starts in 10 days.
To you again, I'm sure. And thank you very much. Rachel Blackmore, the first female jockey to win the Grand National, has announced her retirement. The BBC's sports correspondent Laura Scott reports.
In 2021, she became the first woman to win the Grand National in the race's 152-year history, on board the Henry de Bromhead-trained Manila Times. She went on to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup a year later. Blackmore, who was sidelined for 3 months last year with a serious neck injury, said she felt the time was right to hang up her boots after 16 years as a jockey, saying, "I just feel so lucky to have been legged up on the horses I have and to have experienced success I never even dreamt could be possible." Those close to her said she was in the privileged position to be retiring on her terms at the top of the sport.
And just some cricket news to finish. The Indian Premier League is set to resume on Saturday after the tournament was suspended due to hostilities between India and Pakistan.
Garthy, thank you.
BBC Radio 3 Unwind. Music to unwind your mind. Set yourself up for the morning. Welcome. We have some wonderful sounds to experience together. Bring calm to your afternoon.
This is the Mindful Mix.